Good morning and welcome to Algae. Um, Algae describes a whole bunch of different, mostly underwater plants. Um, and algae are basically like long leaves that don't have a stalk, they don't really make flowers, so they don't have buds. They don't really have much of a root system, and if they do, it's going to be a super shallow root system. Some algae just floats, some algae just kind of sticks, and you'll discover that there's all kinds of different algae. So, for starters, I wanted to tell you about one of the absolute cutest animals in the entire world, which are sea otters. And sea otters basically just float around being incredibly cute professionally, and they're super um, wonderful to watch. They're very playful. They like to float around. And when a mother sea otter is teaching her kid how to exist in the sea otter world, she dives down, she'll teach her little baby sea otter how to pick up little animals from the bottom of the ocean and eat them and float on their backs. And they can actually, they've got this little invention with a stone where they'll go down, they'll grab some hard-shelled animals like clams, and then they'll grab a stone and they can actually pop the clams open and eat them, just floating on their backs. So they float, and even just absolute baby sea otters can swim. But at nighttime, they might actually drift apart. And so what the mother sea otter does to make sure that her little baby doesn't drift away from her is that she wraps it up in seaweed. She literally takes some seaweed, which is a type of algae, and brings it up, wraps it around her baby, and then she can go hunt, she can go grab some food, she can come back to her baby. So if she needs a little babysitter, there it is. It's built into nature. All right, yes, algae is a type of seaweed is a type of algae. Algae can be edible, like seaweed. What do we do with seaweed? You might find seaweed in all kinds of things. You could find seaweed in your sushi. That is nori, and nori is a type of seaweed. Or, maybe more obviously, in your seaweed salad, that is quite literally just seaweed. Or sometimes they make thickeners out of seaweed. If you guys ever eat a vegan cheese and it's got agar agar in it, that's a type of seaweed, which is a type of algae. And also, in ice cream sandwiches, they use something called carrageenan, which comes from carrageen, which is, you guessed it, that's a type of seaweed. So a lot of cultures, especially cultures that are near the ocean, have traditionally eaten seaweed. And guess what? We live in a culture that has traditionally been by the ocean. So we are in San Diego, next to the sea. Um, there's all kinds of seaweeds here that we can eat. So that's a seaweed type that we use. Now, algae doesn't have to grow in only the ocean. It can also grow in fresh water. You have river algae and you have seawater algae as well. And you even have algae that grows outside of the natural elements. I have some algae in my backyard. There's a little abandoned fountain in the backyard that doesn't work, but every time it rains, it fills it up. And when it fills it up, there's this pretty icky, scummy looking algae that just blooms and grows right on up. Algae can be really helpful. It can provide a home for fish to live in and around, and other sea creatures to live in and around. It's a type of basically a giant leaf, so it can provide oxygen under the water and oxygen above the water. It's going to take in that carbon dioxide and it's going to breathe out oxygen that we can use and that animals can use. Um, Algae can also be really dangerous. I'll show you here is something called a red tide, and you have this sort of poisonous, well, it's toxic because there's just too much of it, and this is fatal for fish, and it could be really harmful to humans as well. So that's kind of a sign of pollution and that we haven't been taking care of our waters. It starts to pop up with red fungal blooms, and that can be really hazardous to the environment. So algae, like I said, it's basically just like a giant leaf. It's not super rooted in anywhere, because even what looks like the stem for most algae, if it even does have a stem, is just the hardened tip of the leaf, and that's where the root system is coming from as well. So if a storm comes up and the waves crash a little bit, it's going to rip out all this algae. And if you've ever been walking down the beach and seen seaweed all washed in on the shore, then you have been looking at algae. And also, if you make it down to the beach and check out some of the tide pools, you can see that there will be these little sea plants, these little algae there. Or if you see, if you're at like a freshwater river or a creek and you see some like long, stringy, sort of hairy looking things that are super slippery, well, those are also a different type of algae. All right, excellent. I hope that you enjoyed this, and I will chat with you more tomorrow.